My name is Leona Hartwell. I am 32 years old. And I am a freelance graphic designer who works from home. My condo is not just where I live. It is the one place in the world where my nervous system knows how to be quiet. Every shelf, every lamp, every plant, every soft gray curtain was chosen by me, paid for by me, and placed exactly where it belonged. The centerpiece of that calm world is a massive custom-built terrarium in my living room. A self-sustaining miniature rainforest sealed behind glass, misting gently under soft lights, alive with moss, orchids, isopods, and springtails. It took me 3 years to perfect. I built it slowly, almost obsessively, during lonely nights, after deadlines, after family disappointments, after bad dates, after every moment when I needed proof that something delicate could survive if given the right conditions. It was my pride, my quiet miracle. 18 months ago, I met Adrian Vance. Everyone called him charming. He was an aspiring life coach and micro-influencer. All curated vulnerability, linen shirts, spiritual captions, and phrases like aligned energy and emotional abundance. He had a way of making chaos sound like passion. At first, I mistook that for depth. 6 months ago, I let him move in. That was the moment my sanctuary began turning into his stage. My dining table became his filming desk. My couch became his morning reflection corner. My kitchen became the backdrop for videos about discipline. Though he left protein powder on the counter and dirty mugs in the sink, his 2 best friends, Callum and Brooke, were always there too. Callum was an unemployed creative strategist who never seemed to strategize anything beyond where to sit rent-free. Brooke was a wannabe wellness creator who treated my home like a free co-working lounge. They called themselves the Tribe. I called them the reason I started wearing headphones in my own living room. At first, I tried to be patient. Adrian would kiss my forehead and say, "Bob, they're just in a rough season." Then the rough season became every day. Callum used my second monitor without asking. Brooke borrowed my mugs and left lipstick stains on them. Adrian told me I was too attached to physical boundaries. As if wanting strangers out of my workspace was a childhood wound he had diagnosed for content. The end came last Wednesday. I was finishing a logo package for a client when the 3 of them cornered me in my workspace. Adrian had that look. The one that meant he had made a grand decision and was about to present it as spiritual inevitability. "Leona, darling," he said, leaning against my desk like he owned it. "The universe has provided the most amazing clarity." Callum smirked behind him. Brooke was touching the leaves of my Monstera, with the casual entitlement of someone already imagining where her suitcase would go. I saved my file and looked up. Adrian clasped his hands together. "Callum and Brooke's landlord is a toxic entity. So they're leaving that space." A cold, sharp dread settled under my ribs, and I realized, he continued, smiling wider, "This space, or space, has so much room for their energy too." I already knew the sentence before he said it. From now on, my friends live here, too. We'll all be the Tribe together, in one home. You'll adjust. It was not a question, it was a decree. I looked at Callum, who was already glancing at my monitor setup. I looked at Brooke, who had stepped closer to the terrarium and was staring at it with open fascination. Not admiration. Acquisition. They did not see my home as a home. They saw it as a resource. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask Adrian if he had lost his mind. I wanted to remind him that my name was on the deed. My name was on the mortgage. My name was on every utility bill. And his contribution to this condo had mostly been ring lights, incense smoke, and unpaid promises. But then I saw the trap. If I protested, he would call me controlling. If I raised my voice, He would call me unstable. If I said no, he would turn it into a tearful video about how the woman he loved had abandoned his chosen family. So I chose another path. I smiled. Of course, I said, my voice perfectly even. Whatever you need. Adrian. Welcome home. Guys. The relief in the room was immediate. Adrian's performative anxiety melted into triumph. I knew you'd understand, he said, kissing my cheek. You're the best. We have to celebrate our new home. Brooke squealed. Within 20 minutes, they were out the door, laughing, already making plans for a cocktail bar where they could manifest their incredible future. The door clicked shut, and in the silence that followed, something inside me became very still. Adrian said I would adjust. He was right. The moment their car was gone, I began. This was not anger. Anger is messy. Anger throws things and cries and hopes someone will understand. This was clean. This was surgical. This was an amputation. I pulled out every suitcase, storage bin, and cardboard box I owned. I packed Adrian's clothes first, folded with more care than he had ever shown my space. His linen shirts, his expensive joggers, his camera accessories, his journals filled with half-written affirmations, his crystals, his self-help books, his skincare products lined up like soldiers in my bathroom. Every trace of him went into boxes. I moved with a calm that frightened me at first, then steadied me. Drawer by drawer, shelf by shelf, charging cord by charging cord. In just over an hour, Adrian's entire existence in my home had been reduced to labeled cardboard. The terrarium I covered with a protective sheet. It was mine. It was staying. Next, I found a 24-hour courier service that handled emergency relocations. I gave them Adrian's parents' address and one critical instruction. Delivery was to be cash on delivery for the full amount. The dispatcher paused, then chuckled softly. Understood, he said. That kind of night. Yes, I said. Exactly that kind. While I waited, I called a 24-hour locksmith and scheduled a full high-security lock replacement. Then I sat on the floor, surrounded by absence, and deleted Adrian's fingerprint from my phone, his Face ID from my tablet, his access to my streaming accounts, my cloud folders, my backup drive, and the shared grocery app he used but never paid for. I changed the Wi-Fi password. Then I blocked his number, Callum's number, and Brooke's number. Communication would now be intentional, not assumed. The courier van arrived just before midnight. 2 men helped me load Adrian's life into the elevator. One of them glanced at the boxes, then at my face, and wisely said nothing. When the van pulled away, I felt the first real breath enter my lungs in months. The locksmith arrived shortly after. He worked quickly, replacing every lock with quiet competence. When he handed me the new keys, they felt heavy, solid, real. Nobody's getting through that without a battering ram, he said. The bill was steep. The peace was priceless. It was just after 1 a.m. when I sat on my couch, in the clean, quiet living room. My home felt like mine again. Not fully. Not yet. But enough. I made tea. At 2:30. I heard them arrive. Drunken laughter echoed down the hallway. Shoes stumbled. Someone shushed someone else too loudly. My heart began a slow, heavy drumbeat. Then came the scrape of Adrian's key in the lock. A pause. Another scrape. Harder this time. What the hell, he slurred. It stuck. More rattling. Then, silence. Leona. His voice sharpened. Open the door. I stood in the dark kitchen, hands wrapped around my mug, and said nothing. This isn't funny, he snapped. The pounding started, hesitant at first, then loud enough to shake the frame. Leona. Open this door right now. Callum shouted something behind him. Brooke whined that she needed to sit down. I stayed silent. The screams that followed confirmed everything. Adrian was not just locked out of my condo. He was locked out of a life he had mistaken for his, and for the first time since I met him. Reality was refusing to adjust. The pounding went on for so long that the hallway lights clicked off twice and came back on with each violent movement. Adrian's voice kept changing shape. First, confusion. Then command. Then outrage. Then something close to panic. Leona. Open the door. He shouted. I live here. Callum added. This is insane. Let us in. Brooke was crying now. Or pretending to. With Brooke. It was always hard to tell where the performance ended and the feeling began. I let them exhaust themselves for 10 full minutes. Then, I slid the chain lock into place and opened the door a few inches. Adrian stood there with smeared under-eye concealer, damp hair falling over his forehead, and fury twisting his handsome face into something almost unrecognizable. Callum hovered behind him like a guard dog. Brooke clutched her purse to her chest and stared past me into the apartment, already searching for what she believed should be hers. Finally, Adrian snapped. What is going on? My key isn't working. I changed the locks, I said. My voice was so calm that it seemed to frighten him more than yelling would have. You what? I changed the locks. Why would you do that without telling me? Because you don't live here anymore. Adrian. His jaw dropped. What are you talking about? I took your announcement to mean our relationship was over, I said. So I acted accordingly. His eyes narrowed. I was making room for our tribe. You agreed. No, I said. You informed me of a decision about my home. I let you think I agreed, so I could handle this without a scene. For the first time that night, he looked unsure. Then I added, your belongings have been sent to your parents' house. I trust you have cash for the delivery fee. The words landed like gasoline. Brooke gasped. Callum stepped forward. You can't do that. Callum said, we had an agreement. I have no agreement with you, I said, looking straight at him. You are trespassing. Adrian laughed once. Sharp and ugly. You wouldn't dare call the police. Try me. His expression hardened. I'll tell them you threw me out with nothing. Hey, he said. I'll tell them you locked me out of our home. Go ahead, I said. Explain how you're the victim while trying to force your friends into a condo where you have no lease, no bills in your name, and no legal claim. He lunged toward the gap. The chain caught hard. That was the moment I closed the door. The screaming resumed in the hallway. I called building security. They told me to call the non-emergency police line. 20 minutes later, an exhausted-looking officer arrived to find Adrian, in full performance mode. Officer. Thank God, he said. Voice, trembling on command. My girlfriend has gone completely unstable. She locked me out of our home. I opened the door with the chains still on. She was my guest, I said calmly. This evening. He informed me that 2 other adults would be moving into my 1-bedroom condo permanently, without my consent. I ended the relationship and had his belongings delivered to his permanent address. The officer asked Adrian for ID. Adrian's face changed. His license still listed his parents' house. He had no bill, no lease, no mail, no proof of residence. I had my mortgage statement ready, along with utilities and the deed. The officer turned to him. Sit. This is a civil matter. You do not have the right to force entry. You need to leave the premises. Adrian stared at me like I had betrayed him by knowing the law. Before he left, he leaned close enough that I could smell expensive gin on his breath. You will regret this, he whispered. I believed him, not because he was powerful, because he was humiliated, and humiliated people like Adrian did not search for truth. They searched for weapons. The next morning, his mother called. Leona Hartwell. Mrs. Vance began, her voice already sharp. I have just paid an obscene amount of money for boxes of my son's belongings. Would you like to explain why you threw a sweet man out like garbage? Adrian attempted to move 2 adults into my home without asking. I said, that ended our relationship. He loved you. He loved access. She screamed something about cruelty. About modern women. About my cold heart. I hung up before she finished. By noon, Adrian had gone live. He sat in his childhood bedroom, under soft lighting, eyes red, voice shaking, telling his followers that his toxic girlfriend had thrown him out for wanting to help his unhoused friends. He called me controlling. He called me abusive. He said I had always been jealous of his community. He left out the part where his community had tried to move into my mortgage. My inbox filled with hate. Strangers called me heartless. Women I had never met told me I had destroyed a good man. Men with podcast profile pictures told me I deserved to be alone. I made everything private. For 1 full day, I did nothing but breathe, work, and remind myself that silence is not the same as weakness. Then his email arrived. Subject line, return of shared property. Adrian claimed I had stolen his most valuable creative asset, Terrarium. According to him, it was a collaborative wellness installation and a symbol of his spiritual investment in our shared journey. He demanded immediate return of the terrarium or payment of $5,000. I read the email 3 times, then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because the alternative was breaking something. That terrarium had existed before Adrian ever knew my name. I had built it from sketches, receipts, mistakes, mold blooms, failed drainage layers, and patient rebuilding. It had survived dry spells, fungus scares, and 1 week-long power outage. It had survived him, and now he wanted to claim it because he had once filmed a breathwork reel beside it. This was no longer just a breakup. This was war. I spent the afternoon gathering everything. Receipts for glass panels, lighting systems, substrata, moss, orchids, misting nozzles, chalk, bark, drainage, mesh, photos from 2020 and 2021, forum posts where I had documented the build long before I met Adrian, time-stamped images of me assembling the cabinet in sweatpants with paint on my cheek. Then I booked a 1-hour consultation with a lawyer. He reviewed the documents, listened to the situation, and gave a quiet laugh. He's got nothing, he said. But people with nothing can still make noise. He helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter addressing harassment, false claims, and defamation. I sent it that evening. Afterward, I stood in front of the terrarium and lifted the protective sheet. Inside, the tiny rainforest glowed under warm light, mist clinging to glass. He leaves opening as if none of this mattered. For a moment, he envied it. A sealed world, a balanced world, a world where every living thing had a role and nothing survived by pretending it owned what it only touched. By midnight, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Adrian was telling everyone he was taking me to court. I looked at the folder of evidence on my desk, and for the first time since the pounding started, I smiled. I hoped he did, because if Adrian wanted a stage, I was ready to let him perform under lights he could not control. Adrian kept his promise. A week after I sent the cease and desist letter, I was served with notice to appear in small claims court. He was suing me for the maximum amount allowed, $7,500. According to his filing, I had illegally evicted him, stolen our shared terrarium, and caused emotional and financial damages by destroying his career and reputation. Reading those words, I felt 2 emotions at once. The first was anxiety. The second was certainty. Anxiety, because court is intimidating no matter how innocent you are. Certainty, because every lie he told required me to prove only one truth. The court date arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. I wore a navy blazer and carried one neatly organized binder. Every document had colored tabs. Every receipt was chronological. Every photograph had dates printed beneath it. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I simply refused to walk into battle unprepared. When I entered the courtroom, Adrian was already there. He had brought an audience. His mother sat beside him, arms folded tightly across her chest, as if she had already decided the verdict. Callum and Brooke whispered confidently to each other. Adrian himself wore a crisp white shirt and soft, neutral colors, carefully chosen to project innocence and vulnerability. He smiled when he saw me. It wasn't warmth. It was confidence. He still believed charm could replace evidence. When our case was called, Adrian walked forward first. His performance began immediately. "Your Honor," he said, his voice breaking at exactly the right moments. "I gave everything to this relationship. I loved Leona completely. I only wanted to help two friends who had nowhere safe to go." He lowered his eyes, dramatically. "For that, she threw me out in the middle of the night." He paused long enough for sympathy to settle. "I lost my home. Then came the terrarium. That project represented our relationship." He continued. "We built it together. I contributed ideas. I selected rare orchids. I helped design the ecosystem. She stole something that belongs to both of us." He even managed to wipe away a tear. "If I hadn't lived with him, I might almost have believed him." Then Callum testified. He swore Adrian had personally built most of the terrarium. Brooke followed. She claimed she had watched us create it together over many months. Neither of them hesitated. Neither of them blinked. Listening to them lie so comfortably was strangely calming. People who invent stories usually forget one important thing: reality leaves paperwork. When the judge nodded toward me, I stood slowly. "My name is Leona Hartwell." I began evenly. "Mr. Vance was never a tenant in my home. He was my guest." I placed the first group of documents before the judge: the deed to my condominium, my mortgage statements, my utility bills, my homeowner's insurance. Every document is exclusively in my name. The judge examined them carefully. "No lease?" he asked. "No, Your Honor. No rental agreement. No rent payments. No." The judge made a note. I continued. "The relationship ended the evening Mr. Vance informed me that two unrelated adults would be moving permanently into my one-bedroom condominium without my knowledge or consent." I watched Adrian's smile disappear. Then I opened the second section of my binder. As for the terrarium, I laid receipt after receipt on the table: the glass enclosure, the lighting, the automated misting system, the substrate, the plants, the drainage materials. Every purchase is dated between 2020 and 2021. I looked toward Adrian. We met in the summer of 2023. The courtroom became noticeably quieter. Next came photographs. Large printed images showed the terrarium fully assembled years before Adrian entered my life. Another showed me adjusting lighting while wearing an old university sweatshirt. Another displayed the completed ecosystem sitting exactly where it still stood today. Then I presented screenshots from an online hobby forum. Every update documented my progress over 3 years. Every timestamp predated our relationship. The judge turned page after page without saying anything. Finally, I reached the last divider. "There is one final item, Your Honor." I handed over a flash drive. "This contains audio from my security doorbell, recorded the night Mr. Vance claims he was illegally removed from his home." The courtroom speakers crackled. Then, Adrian's voice filled the room. Drunk, angry, demanding. "Open this door." Callum shouting. Brooke complaining. Then my own calm voice. I changed the locks. Another pause. "You don't live here anymore." Then Adrian threatening me. Then me explaining he had no legal right to force entry. The recording continued until the police arrived. Nothing had been edited. Nothing had been dramatized. Reality had recorded itself. When the audio ended, silence settled over the courtroom. The judge removed his glasses. He looked directly at Adrian. Mr. Vance. Adrian swallowed. Would you like to explain why the evidence before this court directly contradicts your testimony? Adrian opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward his mother, then toward Callum, then Brooke. No one could rescue him. He attempted one last explanation. I just remembered things differently. The judge's expression hardened. You remembered several years of receipts differently. Adrian said nothing. You remembered ownership documents differently. Silence. You remembered a publicly documented construction process differently. Silence again. The judge folded his hands. Judgment for the defendant. He paused deliberately before continuing. Mr. Vance. This court exists to resolve legitimate disputes, not to provide a stage for personal revenge. His gaze shifted toward Callum and Brooke. And I strongly advise all witnesses today to remember that testimony given under oath carries serious legal consequences. Callum suddenly found the floor fascinating. Brooke's confidence evaporated. Then the judge looked back at Adrian. You have come dangerously close to misleading this court. His voice became colder. Do not return with another claim, unless you possess actual evidence. Javel. Case dismissed. The sound echoed through the courtroom. Adrian stood frozen. For the first time since I had known him, there was no speech, no motivational quote, no inspirational caption, no carefully rehearsed explanation, only embarrassment. His mother hurried toward him, whispering urgently. Callum and Brooke avoided everyone's eyes. People waiting for other hearings had watched everything. As I packed an older woman sitting near the back quietly smiled at me. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Truth rarely celebrates loudly. Outside the courthouse, rain had finally stopped. I breathed deeply. Believing the nightmare was finally ending, I was wrong. Losing publicly broke something inside Adrian. Until then, every attack had been about winning. After court, they became about hurting. 3 days later, my doorbell rang. Standing outside was an officer from Animal Services. Ms. Hartwell, he asked politely. Yes. We received an anonymous complaint alleging that an exotic animal is being neglected inside a sealed glass enclosure in your residence. For one terrifying second, I couldn't breathe. My eyes drifted toward the terrarium behind me. Adrian knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't trying to win anymore. He was trying to destroy the one thing he knew I truly loved. For one terrifying second, I couldn't breathe. Then the fear disappeared. What replaced it was something colder. Hesolvi. I stepped aside and smiled politely. Please come in. Officer. He followed me into the living room, where the terrarium rested beneath its soft lights, exactly as it always had. Moisture clung to the glass. Tiny patches of moss glowed emerald green. Delicate orchids stretched toward the light, while springtails disappeared beneath fallen leaves. The officer stood silently for several moments. Then he smiled. You maintain this yourself. I do. How long? Just over 3 years. He nodded with genuine appreciation before leaning closer to inspect the enclosure. There aren't any reptiles or protected species in here. No. Sir. Only isopods. Springtails. Plants. Moss. And microorganisms. He chuckled. I thought so. He looked back at me. My wife says I spend too much time with my own vivariums. I blinked. You keep them too. For almost 20 years. Relief nearly made my knees give out. He slowly walked around the terrarium, examining the drainage layer, the humidity system, the lighting, and the healthy growth of every plant. Finally, he closed his notebook. This complaint is completely unfounded. He sighed. We get anonymous revenge reports after breakups more often than you'd think. He handed me his card. I'll be documenting this as a malicious complaint. If more reports like this come in, they'll become part of the record. Thank you. Before leaving, he looked back once more at the terrarium. It's beautiful, he said. So is the amount of patience it must have taken. After he left, I remained standing in the quiet apartment. The silence felt different now. Until that afternoon, I had been defending myself. Now I understood something. As long as Adrian believed there were no real consequences, he would never stop. His entire identity revolved around one thing: his public image. He didn't measure success by honesty. He measured it by engagement. Every sponsorship, every affiliate code, every motivational video, every smiling photograph, everything depended on strangers believing he represented authenticity. For weeks, I had avoided touching that part of his life. Not anymore. That evening, I opened my laptop. I drafted one email, then another, then another. Each one went to a marketing department, representing one of the wellness brands Adrian promoted. The subject line was simple: regarding your brand ambassador, Adrian Vance. The tone remained completely professional. No insults, no emotional language, no revenge, only facts. I attached the public court judgment dismissing his lawsuit. I highlighted the judge's warning regarding false testimony. I included screenshots of the online harassment directed toward me. I attached documentation confirming the malicious animal services complaint had been ruled unfounded. My final sentence was short. As a consumer who values integrity, I believed your company would want accurate information regarding the public conduct of someone representing your brand. Then, I pressed send. Once. Then again. Then again. When I finished, I closed my laptop. I slept better that night than I had in months. The consequences arrived quietly, exactly as truth often does. The first company simply removed Adrian's photograph from its website. No announcement, no explanation. His discount code stopped working. A few days later, another partnership disappeared. Then another. Within a week, every small sponsorship he depended on had quietly ended. His carefully curated online identity began collapsing, piece by piece. He tried to regain control. He uploaded a tearful video claiming he was the victim of a coordinated campaign led by a bitter ex-girlfriend determined to destroy an honest man. But something had changed. People weren't immediately believing him anymore. The comments looked different. What court case? Why did multiple companies leave at once? Can someone explain the lawsuit? Didn't the judge dismiss everything? The questions multiplied faster than he could delete them. His inspirational posts attracted fewer views. His follower count stopped growing. Then it began shrinking. Eventually, he stopped posting altogether. Months later, a mutual acquaintance told me what happened after the cameras disappeared. The tribe fell apart almost immediately. Callum discovered that living indefinitely with Adrian's parents came with expectations. Laundry, cleaning, finding employment. He lasted less than 2 months before returning to his hometown. Brooke bounced between friends' apartments, still insisting her breakthrough as a content creator was only one viral video away. Without someone else paying the bills, their dream community dissolved into arguments over groceries and electricity. Adrian's parents reached their limit as well. For years, they had defended every excuse, every failed business idea, every dramatic reinvention. But paying the expensive delivery fee, watching him lose publicly in court, and seeing sponsorship after sponsorship disappear finally forced them to confront reality. They gave him an ultimatum: find stable work, contribute to the household, or move out. The last I heard, Adrian had accepted a full-time retail position at a home decor store, according to mutual friends. He still told anyone willing to listen that I had stolen his future, his dream, his reputation, his life. In every version of the story he told, he remained the victim. Accountability never appeared in his narrative. 7 months have passed since the night I changed the locks. Sometimes I stand in my living room with a cup of tea and listen. There is no constant laughter from strangers, no ring lights blocking the hallway, no endless live streams, no conversations about manifestation while someone else pays the mortgage. Only the quiet sound of mist settling inside the terrarium. I repainted the living room. I replaced furniture that carried difficult memories. I expanded my home office. Recently, I even began designing a second, more ambitious terrarium for the studio where I work. The original continues to flourish, Tiny ecosystems don't survive because someone talks about positive energy. They survive because every part supports the whole, because boundaries are respected, because balance is maintained. Looking back, I understand. This was never truly about changing locks. It wasn't even about ending a relationship. It was about refusing to surrender the life I had spent years building. Adrian believed love meant unlimited access, unlimited forgiveness, unlimited sacrifice. He mistook my kindness for permanent permission. He believed I would always adjust. Instead, I reclaimed my own reality. Sometimes I still remember the sound of him screaming outside my front door that night. For a long time, I thought the memory satisfied me because it marked the moment I won. Now I know that's not true. It wasn't the sound of victory. It was the sound of entitlement colliding with consequence. It was the moment fantasy finally met reality. And nothing I have heard since has sounded more peaceful.